Here's Brody Brazil.
I feel like we can all pretty easily see this big trend across the last 5 to 10 years with sports in the United States. There's a lot of teams, and they want a lot of things done to their home venue, either upgrades or full-on replacements. They want a brand new stadium. And things cost a lot more than they used to. No longer is it $400 million total for a stadium. It went straight to $1 billion. Now we're talking about multi-billion-dollar stadiums. And it's not just the stadiums, it's the ballpark villages, it's the arena districts that go around these stadiums. And then because it gets so expensive, there's always city and county approvals needed. But those teams are also expecting public subsidies from those cities and counties. Well, in the state of Illinois, they see that trend, and they're going to try and stop it in its tracks. This is a pretty savage move. I wasn't even sure you could do something like this, and it's not law yet, but I want to tell you about House Bill 2969 according to IllinoisPolicy.org. House Bill 2969 would require teams to win at least 50% of their games in at least 3 out of 5 seasons if they want taxpayer funds for a new stadium or to renovate an existing one. And I got to stop right there. They're not even saying that they will approve taxpayer funds, public subsidies, whatever you want to call it, city and county contributions. This is not even fully stating that that will be approved. This is saying you can't even ask unless you win at least 50% of your games in 3 of the prior 5 seasons. Be a winner on the field, on the court, on the ice, whatever. And if you win, then you can at least ask. And they're calling this balanced earnings and records standings. Balanced earnings and records standings. That doesn't seem like it really flows until you take all the letters of the first letters of the words there. The Bears Act? They're literally calling the Bears out. Well, because the Bears are asking for public money. So are the White Sox. But the Bears are asking for public money, and this almost feels like a diss right at them. The Bears Act. I kid you not, it has been assigned to the House Executive Committee. It's got to receive a vote one way or the other by March 21st if it's going to advance. And then it gets voted on for real. So this is basically in its infancy. But what if it passes within the next handful of days? The Bears Act. The Bears Act. They're going right after these teams. And if you take a look at the White Sox and the Bears, because, well, they are the two teams asking for about $1 billion respectively for their projects, which we'll go into detail on in a second. Last 5 seasons, well, 20 and 21. And yeah, 20 was the shortened season of, 60 total games. The White Sox actually lost the playoff series to the A's. They won the first game, lost the final 2 games out here in Oakland at the Coliseum. They had a 93-win season in 2021, and then they went downhill. 81 and 81 in 22, 61 wins in 2023, and 121 losses in 2024. I know you're thinking in 23, wait, how could they have been 4th? Who was worse than them? Well, the Royals actually were. And then it was the White Sox turn to lose the most games in a season in modern history. They eclipsed 120. They ended up at 121. And things are not looking any brighter for 2025. Sorry, White Sox fans, but they've had a rough go. And the Bears have been even worse, not to the magnitude, like they didn't have a 1-win season or 16-loss season. Close to it, though. 8-8 in 2020, 6 wins in 21, 3 wins in 22, 10 losses in 23, and 12 losses last year in 2024. Last in the NFC North each of the last 3 years. So the Bears aren't even close. The White Sox, well, they're not close now either because they won't win anytime soon. But at least they did have some winning seasons not too far in the distant past. Okay, so the White Sox, they want to build this new stadium at the 78. It's this beautiful location on the South Loop. It's kind of hard to believe that this remains undeveloped. Like over time, nothing went here, and there's so much land. Easily you can put a ballpark and that district that they would want and the hotels and the office space, and it's right on the Chicago River. My goodness, a water taxi from downtown to the ballpark, unreal. There's transit stops nearby. Transit could be added for this, so there's a lot of upside. there's just, the kind of one big downside. $1 billion of public funding is what it might take to get this project done. There you see a rendering. There you see how all of this would fill in. It fits so nicely on the Chicago skyline. This would be such an asset for Chicago, which already has Wrigley Field. A cathedral should never be changed. I mean, they've modified it, they've upgraded it, but Wrigley Field should always be home of the Cubs. White Sox, maybe not so much. I understand Comiskey and that current site. Well, the old ballpark was across the street. They built the new one on the south side of that area in that block. The White Sox don't have maybe the same dedicated history to their ballpark. So yeah, they could move a little bit north, get closer to downtown. They could do something beautiful here. They could kind of honor their past with the pinwheels and the fireworks out there in center field. These were the renderings that came out last summer. These are still beautiful, and I root for this to get done. This means the White Sox aren't leaving Chicago. This means the White Sox can kind of make right with a better venue than, Guaranteed Rate Field? I almost still want to call it U.S. Cellular. I almost really still want to call it New Comiskey. But this would secure the White Sox. It would eliminate questions, and it really doesn't matter about ownership anymore. The White Sox would not be moving if they had a ballpark just like this. But the problem is, for everything they want to do and what this was about to cost a year ago and what it might now cost, and you add in tariffs and inflation and the interest rate, I mean, it's unfortunately, seemingly kind of out of reach and not reasonable if the White Sox are going to ask for $1 billion. And same thing goes for the Bears. And it's this site just south of Soldier Field. In fact, this rendering right here shows Soldier Field completely demolished. It's gone, but it sits right now just north of where this brand new domed stadium would be. And quite honestly, right there on Lake Michigan, maybe a dome makes more sense. If you want to have that Taylor Swift concert in November, you can do it in the dome. You can't really do it outdoors at Soldier Field in the month of November. Still a perfect site. Obviously, where it's at, downtown Chicago, all that open space. I'm surprised that they actually wouldn't develop all that they'll leave it more like an open space and parks, and that big window to the skyline off in the distance looks like they're hosting Monday Night Football. The Bears are. But again, all of this to the tune of $1 billion just of public funding. This is probably now more like a $3 billion project or stadium alone, but $1 billion is what the public would either have to contribute or somehow participate with in terms of tax breaks or additional hotel taxes or car rental taxes. Sometimes it's not just shoveling public money and public funding towards a project. It's giving this project a bunch of tax breaks, so that's the value from the public, and that's what makes the project go. But again, $1 billion, I mean, it's a hard ask for one of these two teams, let alone both of them at the same time. And that brings us back to IllinoisPolicy.org and their coverage of this. Governor J.B. Pritzker called public funding for a new stadium nearly impossible, referring to the Bears and the Chicago White Sox, as both have lobbied the state for financial assistance. Chicago taxpayers are still on the hook, I kid you not, $589 million from Soldier Field's redevelopment from 2002 and $50 million for building Guaranteed Rate Field. That happened in the early 90s, and they still owe, the public does, $50 million on that and $589 on the recent upgrades to Soldier Field, which, now 20 plus years ago, coming up on 25 years ago, but still $589 million is what they're on the hook for. So you can understand public sentiment from taxpayers in Chicago, taxpayers of the state of Illinois. This is really a savage move. I don't know that I've seen another state do something like this. I'll be very interested to see if this passes, if this moves on, if this actually becomes a thing. I mean, if it does, I think you could almost consider it a precedent for anybody else down the line. Although there have to be some outs, and I got to end the video like this, there have to be some outs. What if there's a good situation that makes sense and the team's not winning, but they're close, or there's some other reason why all of this just makes so much sense? It kind of feels like the state is really picking on these two teams. And what if there is another situation that's all good, but now the law would prevent it? So I wonder if there are any loopholes around this, and I wonder if this really, quite honestly, is politicians picking on the White Sox and Bears for their recent suggested requests. And I want to be fair about that too. There's no official ask yet from the White Sox or the Bears. It's just been understood that the amount they would be looking for is in the range of about $1 billion. Hey, that's the end of this video. I really appreciate you for sticking around. Thumbs up down below. Greatly helps me, this video, and this channel. And one more thing, go down there and make sure to subscribe so I can definitely see you back here next time.